So aside from Assassin's Creed Mirage, the second game I was most looking forward to at Ubisoft Forward was their new open-world Star Wars game, Star Wars Outlaws. This project was first announced over 2 years ago now, believe it or not. In fact, I even made a video talking about it when that first happened. And then it was just complete radio silence, but we had heard there was one more big AAA Ubisoft game coming out soon that had not been announced, so by process of elimination, it seemed pretty obvious it would be the Star Wars game, and at the Xbox Game Showcase is where we got the announcement, and then of course at the Forward event, we got a decent amount of gameplay. I really wasn't sure what to expect from this game initially. The only thing we really knew was it was being developed by Massive, the studio behind The Division, so I was kind of expecting The Division, but Star Wars. But what we are getting actually looks much different from that, and I for one like the direction they took this game. Ubisoft in recent years had really liked making these large, full-fledged RPG games, and so I was pleasantly surprised that Star Wars Outlaws is a narrative-focused action-adventure open-world game. In fact, pretty much all the big games they showed at this event were narrative-focused action-adventure games. The Avatar game, of course, AC Mirage, and this game. I know some people were hoping for a full-fledged RPG where you can create your own character and all, but I am perfectly fine with the direction they decided to take this game in. I'll admit I wasn't too intrigued at first when they released the cinematic trailer, but once we got the gameplay and a more detailed description of what the game will be, it now has me very interested. First of all, as a massive Star Wars fan, having a huge open world, or should I say open galaxy Star Wars game, has been a big dream of mine for a long time. Although Ubisoft is branding this as the first ever open world Star Wars game, which I don't think is technically true. I believe the KOTOR and Old Republic games classify as open world games, but still, we've never had an open world Star Wars game like this before. It was only a matter of time before it would happen, and we're finally getting it. This is also the first AAA Star Wars game in over a decade to not be published by EA, since that exclusive license has finally expired. So this is going to be the start of a big wave of new Star Wars games to come in the future. But let's get into the actual game itself and some of the things I noticed and what got me excited. I was also invited to a little exclusive deep dive event into the game after Ubisoft Forward, where the director went into a little more detail about some of the various systems within the game, so I'll share what interested me the most with you guys as well. But Outlaws is set in between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, where we'll of course be playing as Kay Vess, an outlaw who's caught up in business with various crime syndicates who have begun to thrive under the guise of the Empire. Admittedly, at first, when I heard it was going to take place around the original trilogy timeline, I was a little disappointed just because we get so much content from that era. I was hoping for maybe a High Republic game, but thankfully this game is taking a very different perspective of this era that we haven't seen much of before, focusing on the various crime syndicates and criminal underworld. I like the idea that we're playing as a smaller, inconsequential character and not some chosen one or Jedi or something like that. While those are fun to play as well, don't get me wrong, Cal Kestis and Starkiller are awesome. I think it's nice to change the perspective a little bit. Some people might be upset that they can't wield a lightsaber, which I understand because lightsabers are so fun to use in these kinds of games, but I'm very okay with putting more focus and depth into some blaster gameplay. Again, just a nice change of pace. The Jedi fantasy itch has kind of been scratched for me anyway with the newest Jedi games, so I for one am excited at the prospect of playing as an outlaw type character. I will say I'm not completely sold on Kay Vess as a character or the story. Obviously, I'm going to reserve my judgment for when the game actually comes out. I just hope they don't make it feel like some cringy self-discovery empowerment story. Kay Vess does look interesting to me, but some of the dialogue and the way the story is being described does worry me a little, but I'd say I'm still optimistic about it, and I like the idea of the plot revolving around a massive heist. They almost make it sound like a Star Wars heist movie, and who doesn't love a good heist movie? Done right, this could be a very interesting and worthwhile Star Wars story that fits right into the universe, but only time will tell. Plus, we have an adorable companion in Nyx. It wouldn't be Star Wars without the adorable little companion to accompany you on your adventures. I'm almost certain the commando droid in the trench coat is going to be my favorite character as well. But as for the actual gameplay, this is where most of my excitement factors in. So it looks like it's got some of your typical Ubisoft gameplay loop. We saw some stealth, a takedown, even some light climbing and parkour mechanics by the looks of it. I wouldn't expect that to be like Assassin's Creed level though. I really like that Nyx seems to be heavily useful within the gameplay. You can have him do various things like attack or distract guards, open up special opportunities, and even fetch weapons for you. That looks very unique, and I think that's a smart way to incorporate the companion into the gameplay. I'm sure you'll be able to upgrade Nyx and his capabilities throughout the game as well. The blaster gunplay looks decent. We didn't get to see too much of it, but there does seem to be some depth with the different modifications and settings you can set it to for it to be more effective against different enemy types. Nyx also picks up one of the enemy rifles for Kay. I'm not sure if you're going to actually be able to equip a rifle blaster like this. It seems like you can only pick them up off dead enemies and then use them until they overheat. So if the pistol blaster is the only weapon we can consistently use, I'd be a little concerned about the repetition of using that weapon throughout the whole game. Hopefully there will be plenty of upgrades and depth to it at least to help alleviate the repetition. But one of the most interesting things they brought up in that exclusive deep dive I was invited to was the reputation system. There's actually consequences to being spotted by the Pike Syndicate in this mission. You can see later on your reputation with them is decreased, and Kay even talks about it, and apparently we'll have these reputations with all the different crime syndicates in the game, which hopefully has an impact on the story and world around you. Something like this has a lot of potential, and the idea that you can avoid that reputation hit by completing a mission without being spotted is going to make stealth way more important and suspenseful, knowing there's actual consequences for being detected. Kay then escapes on her motocross type speeder, which will be our main form of transportation on the ground. It looks very cool. There's some combat with it, and in the exclusive event, they told us that you could do different stunts and tricks with the speeder as well. We then get a look at one of the more dense towns on the planet, in which there will apparently be multiple dense cities on some planets. It looks great to no surprise. Say what you will about Ubisoft, but they know how to craft some gorgeous looking environments. In this cutscene, it reveals that you can actually make choices in this game, so there are some light hints of an RPG in there. It doesn't seem to be fully centered around choices though, like a lot of RPGs. For example, you don't see tons of dialogue choices or different things to say. You just get to make the big choice at the end when deciding whether to bribe the Imperial officer or not, which I like the idea of. Who knows how many choices there will be, but hopefully there's significant weight and consequences to all these choices that lead to different endings and such. Obviously, we see the wanted system where the Empire starts hunting down Kay after she refuses to bribe the officer, but I also hope this choice might have larger consequences down the line if you run into this officer again, or if it just affects your overall reputation with the Empire. Again, something like this has so much potential, but that brings us to my absolute favorite part of this entire gameplay walkthrough. It's something I've been dreaming about being able to do in a Star Wars game ever since I was a kid. Being able to get in your ship, take off, and fly out of the atmosphere into space without any loading screens. That is a dream come true for me in Star Wars. And if it actually works well and as smooth as it's shown here, future, then I am very excited for that. Hopefully you can fly back onto the planet from space without any loading screen as well. I'm super impressed Massive was able to pull this off. I can't imagine that's an easy feat to accomplish in a game. Just knowing you can do that has me more excited than anything else we saw. But it's good to know there's ship combat as well. It looks kind of similar to how it was in Battlefront 2. It may be Star Wars Squadrons a little. You can see the circle for where you're supposed to lead your shots onto the enemy ships. There seems to be a fair amount of depth as well, with special maneuvers, rockets, and other abilities. Ship combat is icing on the cake here, and that's going to make the entire game feel massive, no pun intended. The hyperspace travel looks really clean and easy to use. Going from one system to another, again without a loading screen or cinematic, it's very impressive. Some of the most impressive technological feats I've ever seen from a Ubisoft game, so hopefully it's actually as polished as this in the final product. The developers said we would be able to explore and find secrets within space as well. It's not just going to be completely empty and barren, so that has me very intrigued. Overall, this game looks very promising. There's so much potential here if it lives up to it. It has the potential to be the game me and many other Star Wars fans have been dreaming about for years. We didn't get an official release date, just 2024, but the game is apparently slated to release in this fiscal year, meaning early 2024. Who knows if that'll actually happen, but I will most certainly be keeping a close eye on this game as we get closer to its potential release. It's a good time to be a fan of single-player games, and for space games as well, with Starfield too. But let me know what you guys think of Star Wars Outlaws. Do you think it could be the Star Wars game you've dreamed of? Can Ubisoft pull it off successfully? As always, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you left a like and considered subscribing to the channel if you're new. There's still a few other things I'd like to touch on from the Ubisoft Forward, so stay on the lookout for those videos. And other than that, thanks for stopping by, everybody. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.